Mike Regan. He's here with us in the studio. He wrote today's Bloomberg Big Take about the year in investing. He writes, quote, "Everyone seemed to become a trader, taking chances on outlandish ideas as excitement and fascination mixed with fear and greed." We're talking NFTs, we're talking crypto, and of course, we're talking meme stocks. Mike, if 2021 was the year of identity investing, how should we think about what's in store for next year?
Well, I think you definitely have to look at the way these online communities have formed around sort of the notion of identity investing, whether it's a meme stock trader on Wall Street Bets or, the NFT communities going on and the people that got in on Dogecoin and Shiba Inu. And I think that's really the legacy of 2021. And it was a really surprising thing that happened. We all got sent home last year and this year to sort of isolate. And everyone turned to their computer screen, their phone screen. And suddenly these communities that had already pre-existed, but they really grew and their sort of influence on the markets became very extreme. And I think now going forward, when you look at the markets, whether it be equities or cryptocurrencies, you have to take these communities into consideration as sort of partly the driver of the fundamental value of these assets. If there are enough people pumping this stuff up on social media, regardless what you think about, say the fundamentals of the business, if it's a stock, or the innovation on the table, if it's a cryptocurrency or an NFT, it's really, the power of these communities that's driving the value of that. And I think that's a new thing that the professional investor class and the amateur retail class is really going to have to start to put into the equation, put into their math when they try to figure out what they want to buy.
Mike, I love the term identity investing because it feels like it so perfectly describes what we've all been watching over the past year and a half. These online communities, like you described, sort of spring up, especially around these different asset classes. But I guess I'm curious. I mean, part of the reason identity investing has worked, it feels, is because everything has gone up in markets. Everything seems to be rallying. Right. I'm curious if we're entering a year where, the Fed starts to tighten, some of the stimulus and liquidity comes out of the system and actually lines start to go down. I mean, do you expect that some of these trends that have been in place will endure?
I think it's definitely something you have to think about and worry about. One thing about identity investing is you never have to lock into one of these identities. You can sort of shift the next day, kind of chase the next hottest thing. And that's what we saw a lot this year. But I think even more so than the Fed, I think about all of the stimulus, the congressional spending, the enhanced unemployment benefits, the stimulus checks that went out, all of that stuff. And on top of that, really the forced savings that a lot of consumers had, the U.S. personal savings rate just went through the roof during the pandemic because of all that government money, but also because, there just wasn't a lot of places to spend your money. You couldn't go out to the movies. You couldn't go to a concert. You couldn't go to a ball game. So there was just this big pent-up pile of cash that needed to be spent. And I think slowly we are spending that down. And the market's sort of chipping away at that paper wealth will possibly exacerbate that trend. So I do think, the sort of everything bubble is something that's not sustainable. But I do think this notion of sort of tribal identity, group, community-based investing is something that will continue to prop up assets here and there. But I do think you're right, Katie. It's hard to imagine another year where it was on the scale that we saw in 2021.
Mike, I'm wondering, if we think about this as some sort of market cycle, what this tells us about perhaps where we are in a market cycle, where we have, something that people would describe as JPEGs that are easily reproduced, right? NFTs selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's digital representations of something that doesn't even exist in the real world, for example, or meme coins. Yeah. Does it tell you anything about where we are in a market cycle?
A guy my age, we always tend to go back to the dot-com bubble to try to make sense of all of this, and I think the thing about the dot-com bubble is at the time, you weren't quite sure, well, should I buy pets.com or amazon.com? And obviously one of them turned out to be a great investment, a great trade. And I think that's the case with the crypto, the DeFi, the NFT space. You got to think of NFTs as more than just JPEGs. There are these smart contracts. There's a lot of potential there. The one I always discuss is Zed Racing, an NFT that's basically a thoroughbred horse. And this is partly for Katie's interest.
I appreciate
She's
that.
A horse
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, you can race an NFT against another horse NFT. You can breed them. So, it's more than just JPEGs. I think there is a lot of innovation coming in this space, and we're not quite sure, looking at all these assets available now, which one is the pets.com and which one is the amazon.com. So I think that's the sort of the puzzle people are going to have to figure out going forward.